point. Can we start now? Is it okay to start? Yeah. Good morning. A warm welcome to all the participants of today's webinar. IJCCI and Grant Thornton jointly have been organizing several webinars and seminars for the Indian and the Japanese business community at frequent intervals. The next 1.5 hours, the Grant Thornton team of experts will take us through presentations focusing on the evolution of Global Capability Centers, GCCs, and why India is emerging as a preferred destination for GCCs with relevant statistics. I have great pleasure in welcoming the expert panel. We have today with us Ms. Ruchi Sharma. She is a partner and GCC industry leader at Grant Thornton Bharat. We have Mr. Manabu Yokota, Director and Advisory Member of the dedicated India-Japan Corridor at Grant Thornton Bharat, and Mr. Vijay Jayaram, tax expert from Bangalore. I am confident the team members' insights and expertise will enrich our discussions and provide valuable perspectives on the evolving landscape of GCC industry. For the benefit of Japanese audience, I would like to briefly address in Japanese language about the challenges faced by GCCs today and the advantages of selecting India as a destination for GCC by the Japanese companies. The Japanese audience may please pardon me for any limitations in my Nihongo. 皆様、こんにちは。本日のウェビナーにご参加くださいまして誠にありがとうございます。IJCCI とグラントーテンは、これまでにもインドと日本のビジネスコミュニティのために数多くのウェビナーやセミナーを共催してまいりました。本日は、横戸学さん、ルチシャルマさん、そしてビジャイ・ジャイラムさんをお迎えしております。それではこれより、グローバルキャピビリティセンターを担当されるグラントータンの専門チームの皆様に進行をお願いしたいと思います。さて、皆様もよくご存知の通り、GCC とはテクノロジー、人材、そしてイノベーションを通じて企業のグローバル業務を支援する戦略な拠点です。戦略的な拠点です。すみません。GCC の成功は、その戦略をいかに効果的に実行できるかにかかっています。AI や機械学習、アナリティクスといった先進技術と優れたグローバル人材を組み合わせることで、プロセスの最適化、意思決定の高度化、そしてイノベーションの推進を実現することができます。こうしたセンターは、市場環境の変化に迅速に 対話体制を備えており、変化のスピードが非常に速い現在のビジネス環境において極めて重要な役割を果たしています。一方で GCC は急速に変化するビジネス環境の中で様々な課題や制約にも直面しています。中でも重要なのは変化に柔軟に対応できる強靭で優秀な人材を確保育成することです。競争が激しさを増す中、GCC には常に革新し、継続的に改善し続ける姿勢がまとめられています。また GCC を設立し、企業の人材、技術、イノベーション戦略をさせるために、社内で十分な支持を得ることも、多くの企業にとって大きな挑戦となっています。さらに、顧客の期待が進化する中で GCC は、その変化に応じて戦略を柔軟に適用させる必要があります。デジタル変革の進展に伴い、業務全体にわたるデジタルプロセスとテクノロジーと東岸がまとめられており、その複雑さは一層勝っています。かけて市場の変動による財務的な複雑化も高まっており、運営効率や成長に影響を与える可能性があります。しかしながら皆様、近年、インドは GCC の最も有望な拠点の一つとして、ますます注目を集まっています。本日は専門家の皆様から統計を交えながら、インド企業が果たしている重要な役割とその成長の可能性をどのように活かしているのかについてお話しいただきます。IJCCI とグラントったのは今後も日本のビジネスコミュニティの皆様に価値ある情報を共有し、インド企業との協力関係を深めるためのサポートを惜しみなく提供してまいります。それでは、グランタヌのチームの皆様に進行を任せいたします。どうもありがとうございます。I now hand over to Ruchi Sharma-san to conduct the technical session. Over to Ruchi Sharma-san.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rugna-san, for that welcome address and inviting us to host this session for the larger audience. Hi, everyone. I'm Ruchi. I'm a partner with GT, and I lead the GCC for in the clients and markets for the firm. And I would like to take you through an overview of the GCC sector in India, how it has evolved in the last 3 to 4 decades since the time it started, and where do we stand now, and why India remains one of the leading countries to provide an ecosystem for these offshore centers. So, yeah. So, can I have the presentation? I hope everybody is able to see the presentation. So, if I have to look at it, we can pretty much broadly divide the evolution in three waves for GCCs in India. So, we started about in late 80s, early 90s. The GCC story started in India, and pretty much through with Genpact and Amex, who were basically the flag bearers of starting this industry in India, which is now one of the largest service providers in their category from India. And they pretty much laid down they paved the road for this industry, which will see an exponential growth in the coming years. So since I would say then it's been like around 4 decades, and the industry has seen a lot of changes, and a lot of it are actually reflected with the changes that has come into the world, which is basically economical changes, political, environmental, technical, and socially, and all of those have an impact on how GCC as a sector has evolved in India. So for example, initially when it started, the technology was fairly basic, it hasn't been advanced so much, and given the large workforce in India at that point in time, what came first to India were these processes which were very base level, which were very easy to kind of put into a factory lineup, and very output driven. Basically, one simple process that was sent here, and then people will just work on that very particular process and then send it back to the onshore team. And the focus remained for where most of the work was manual. So a huge amount of employee or a labor arbitrage was one of the areas that was seen as a primary driver for sending the work to an offshore center. And that's where the first wave started with. And it continued for about a similar kind of work, about a decade and a half. And uh, and it was primarily because again, the technology was basic. There were not such advancement of like AI or even cloud at that point in time, so it was not that easy to kind of have same sense of, or the same way of two teams or offshore or onshore teams working together. So that is what kind of defines the first set of the wave, where we call them like offshore centers. Then came the second level, which is where now, after this, the processes were basically matured. Uh, the centers had started to demonstrate how they can kind of give and deliver a good output, and the onshore teams got more confidence to send more work, slightly more complex work, to India, and started seeing India or these centers are not just output driven, but more like a centralized hubs for some of their functions, which can be sent to India. And since they started to centralize these functions, they also started to see opportunities which come with the centralization of the process, which is primarily creating efficiencies and innovation, and bring integrating technology to see how they can provide more output with the same kind of team. And then they were being asked to kind of now innovate, think about new target operating models, and deliver excellence. So then from the offshore centers, they become in-house centers, right? So then we started seeing, okay, global in-house centers, where they started to come up as a hubs, where centralized processes could be sent, and where end-to-end or more complex work could be sent to India. So that's when they started kind of calling it a global in-house centers. Then we enter into say the third wave, where there's a huge technological advancement, right? Then we had a huge wave of that cloud coming in, and the ability to people work from different locations and deliver same output, and also collaborating with teams in different jurisdictions and working on projects collectively, right? And that was made possible by the technology. The other um, the other thing which kind of contributed to the next wave, I would also think, was is as COVID, because after COVID, people realized that it is you one can actually deliver work sitting pretty much anywhere. So it gave like a pretty big push to these offshore centers, and more work started coming in. And then we also see in the last 5 to 6 years, in fact, more GCCs also started opening up, and organizations which were not super comfortable with the idea of sending something which is a remote, they got way more comfortable after COVID, because they see the outputs can be given sitting anywhere. So then we see like a third wave, where with the tech advancement, with automation coming in, and the operating model became more of a global operating model rather than saying an offshore or an onshore teams. They started coming up to be like a global capability centers. And that's why, again, the terminology changed to say that now they are not just in house, but they are now a part of a strategic way of how we are going to operate in the globally, and they become way more integrated part of the entire organization rather than just being an offshore center or some center outside of the onshore teams. So and now we are entering into the next wave, and then let's see how this entire with agentic now coming in, where we see a lot of work can also be done by these agents, and large language model coming into play. Then we do believe that now these centers will again go through a change, and what used to be like a labor arbitrage, we are yet to see how this entire thing will play out once we do see some of these agents kind of doing some basic level work rather than humans doing that. So after this, if I may ask Yomoga-san to kind of come and provide the Japanese translation.
Thank you, thank you, ルチさん。では、私、横田の方からですね、今のルチの方から、英語で説明させていただいた内容を、日本語でちょっと要約してですね、お伝えできればと思います。ルチの方から、大きく3つの、ウェーブが、過去出ていたということが冒頭あったかと思いますけども、最初のウェーブとしてはですね、主にオフショアセンターもしくはアウトソーシングセンターとして、存在していた GCC というところで、1980年から90年代ということを言ってたかと思います。で、その時に、名前としてはですね、アメックスとか JNACT ですかね、会社が主導権を取って、サービスプロバイダーとして、スタートしたということを申してたかと思います。で、そのスタートに応じてですね、その後、世界の経済だったり政治だったり、技術というところにフォーカスしてたかと思いますけども、様々な変化を通じてですね、このセンター、センターといいますか、アウトソーシングセンターが成長してきたということを述べてたと思います。ただ、この段階でのセンター、アウトソーシングセンターというのは、基本的にはベースレベルで、アウトプット、代行してアウトプットを出すというところで、ドリブン成長してきたというところは、一つのポイントかなと思います。で、それが、ファーストウェーブということで、オフショアセンターとして、まずは、代行としてですね、このアウトソーシングセンターの、第一の波がスタートしたというふうに述べています。次の、セカンド、ウェーブとして述べていたのが、テクノロジーというところをこちらでも言ってたかと思いますけども、このアウトソーシングセンターがですね、成熟をしていく中で、単なる、業務の外出し、プロセスセンターではなくて、より、集中した、ハブとして、使われるようになってきたということを述べていました。で、その中でのポイントとしては、効率性と、イノベーションに、フォーカスを当てて、それらを、効率化、もしくはイノベーションを生み出すというところでの、ハブとして、セカンドウェーブが来たということを述べています。で、この時に、よりですね、アウトソーシングからインハウスのセンターにシフトし始めたというところが、セカンドウェーブの、ポイントかなと思います。で、最後の、サードウェーブですね。こちらでは、よりですね、プロジェクトが、集約された、コレクティブということを言ってたかと思いますけども、集約された形で、より発展系に、なってきていると。インハウスでありながらもですね、業務代行にとどまらず、様々なプロジェクトが、集約された形で、なおかつ、戦略的な、単なるオペレーションではなくて、戦略的な形で、機能するようになってきたと。この中で、一つの大きなポイントとしてはですね、自動化だったり、あとリモートというところも言ってたと思いますけども、 も、世界各地からリモートで、インドとつながれるようになってきたというのも非常に大きいのかなと。おそらくCOVID がそれを加速させたというところは大きいと思いますけども、それによってですね、単にインドが、地理的に孤立して、それでもアウトソースっていうことではなくて、世界とリモートでつながった形で、より戦略的に活用できるような、存在といいますか、機能にGCC がなってきたというところが、最後の、Wave3 という形になります。で、最後、今後、Wave4 ということで、こちらについてはですね、より今度は、インドが単なる受け手ではなくて、業務代行にとどまらない、皆様、世界にいらっしゃるお客様とですね、共に考える形での GCC という形に今後は変わっていくだろうということを、述べております。こちらについては、今後ですね、どのように変わっていくかというのは要注目点なのかなというところでございます。一旦、以上でございますので、ちょっと長くなったかもしれませんので、次回、次ページ以降はもう少し要約してお話しできればと思います。ルチさん、let me hand over to you to the next slide.
Thank you. So, we can move to the next slide, please. So, while we spoke about that, there is a big change in that how GCCs evolve in India, and even now, India remains a preferred destination for GCCs. So we'll talk about like why is it so. One is, of course, like you would have seen from the earlier slide, that we have close to about 1700 GCCs already, and as we speak, more and more GCCs are opening in India. uh, about some of the estimates says that close to 80 GCCs have opened in India in the last 6 months, which is a fairly a large number. And it kind of also tells you that the story hasn't kind of stagnated. It keeps on kind of coming in, and every day or every week and every month we have somebody new coming and opening a center here. And why is it happen? Why India remains like a key destination? We actually host more than 50% of the capability centers of the world. That says a lot. So now, if that is the case, one, why it kind of remains is that one, we have a first movers advantage, right? We were pretty much the first country to start kind of setting up these centers. And what happens is, over a period of time, we have created a fairly strong ecosystem that makes it it's make it easier for these organization to set up now new centers as well. Now, they are basically leveraging a lot of the infrastructure that has been set up in the last 4 decades. And now, a lot of these organizations are also providing the services, which is like a GCC as a service, which pretty much means that you can actually start a GCC with a very small number of people, because the template has been standardized pretty much to say that, okay, today if I want to set it up, we know exactly like how to go about it. So that kind of reduces your time from the concept to the floor, right? Now, because of this entire situation, one, there are now various cities in India which provide you with this infrastructure, right? Because when you are trying to set up something, there are a few considerations that you will have to keep in mind, right? For example, whether the place has an airport, what is the connectivity, what is the what kind of scalable office places spaces that you can get. Now, there is still a concentration in some cities, but we see that all of that is also expanding. So what started maybe 3 or 4 cities initially, now we already have many more cities, about 10 to 12, and we see more tier 2 and more tier 3 cities now opening up these centers, because they are providing that kind of infrastructure. So infrastructure is one why it remains. The second is, of course, the talent pool and the demographic, right? We have a very large, young, educated talent pool across various functions, including technology, finance, engineering, analytics, compliance. So, no matter whatever function or whatever space you look at, we are able to provide, the India is able to provide a fairly large pool of resources, which gives you the scalability that you're looking for, right? So we currently have about 2.9 million people working in the industry. So besides the new talent, which is like the college pass outs and general pass outs, CAs, which are coming into workforce, we have an experienced workforce of these people who have already worked in the industry and come with that kind of experience. So if you see, in terms of besides the talent, there is also most of the industry representation is also there, right? While the technology companies are one of the major industry which is in India, but besides that, whether it is retail, is it pharma, whether it is BFSI sector, so you do get that industry experience as well when you're setting up a center. It is not just the functional perspective, right? And the government very actively is also promoting now this sector in the last couple of years, and we will hear about it later in this presentation from my colleague, who will provide you more insights into what kind of policies at the state level and at the central level the government is coming up to promote this sector. So overall, India still remains a preferred destination for GCCs. Over to you, Manabu-san, for the Japanese translation.
サンキュー、リュウチさん。では、こちらも、もう少し、先ほどよりは手短にですね、日本語で、要約をお伝えしたいと思います。大枠は、インドがなぜ GCC にとっての、魅力的な投資先なのかというところでございます。統計としてはですね、現在、1700ぐらいの、前後の、GCC がインドにあって、過去6ヶ月でですね、毎月じゃないです。6ヶ月で約80の、GCC が開設されていると。これは確かに非常に大きな数字のインパクトがあるものかなと思います。でなおかつ、世界の、そのような、ファンクションのですね、50% ぐらいということを申してたかと思いますけども、これも非常に大きなウェイトかなと思います。で、その理由の一つとしては、先行者としての優位性。でなおかつ、それに基づいての、設立するのにですね、スピーディーに、短縮した期間で、設立できるというのが非常に大きいというところを、まずは申してたかと思います。で、それに加えてといいますか、短く設立される、それの背景にあるものとして大きく4つ、申してたかと思います。まず1つ目はインフラということで、過去はですね、いわゆるティア1シティということで3つ4つの都市というところからスタートをしていましたけども、それが今はティア2、ティア3の、都市として、10から12、前後の、都市に、GCC が設立されていると。これはやはりインフラというところも大事なポイントだと思いますので、これは非常にアドバンテージをインドが持っている一つだと思います。で、二つ目としては、皆さんご承知のように人口動態というところがあろうかと思います。テクノロジー、ファイナンス、エンジニアリング、アナリティクス、そのように申したかと思いますけども、これらに従事している若くて優秀な人材、タレントと言ってたかと思いますけども、そちらの存在というところが2つ目のポイントとして、大事だというところですね。で、3つ目が、いわゆる IT からですね、現在はリテールやファーマというところ、BFSC というところ、ファイナンスですかね、ありますけども、様々なセクターに GCC が広がっているというところは、これまでの IT にちょっと変調していた状況からですね、様々なお客様のご要望にお応えできる下地が整ってきたというところかなと思います。で、最後4つ目としましては、州政府及び連邦政府からのアクティビティと言って、 ったかと思いますけど、様々な GCC の、サポートが、出されていて、政府による、支援体制というところも4つ目、インドが魅力的な、理由の、挙げられていたかと思います。はい、以上でございます。Thank you for ルチさん。Let me hand over to you.
Thank you. So as we speak about, we first spoke about the evolution of GCCs in India, and then we spoke about that why India still remains an attractive destination for MNCs to set up. Now we come to how Japan or how Japanese companies can still leverage this ecosystem, or what are some of the areas where we see Japanese firms are doing work in India. And so if I have to see, 70% of the GCCs in India are actually from UK and the US, where US kind of holds maximum of them. But Japan has close to about, so from all the GCCs, 5% of them are from the Japan, or headquartered in Japan, so which is a fairly a smaller number. And we do believe that more companies from Japan can leverage this ecosystem, and where this is makes a lot of sense for them to kind of start leveraging it. One is that we already, I mean, the areas where we already have Japanese companies opening up is around the automotive sector, electronics and manufacturing sector, where we see a large number of representation from Japan. So we have Japanese GCCs like Sony, Panasonic, MUFG, Toyota, Denso, who are already kind of leveraging some of the ecosystem. So, for example, you have Suzuki R&D Center in India, which is where they are doing a lot of R&D in the autonomous driving and EV technologies. Similarly, you have Edge Cortex, which has a GCC in Hyderabad, which is focusing on AI specific processor architecture, and they are actually leveraging India's talent pool to see how to do the next gen chip development and IoT devices. If I go to the healthcare, then Takeda Pharmaceutical is using India GCCs for advanced drug discovery and clinical trials. So we already have such examples where the India talent pool is being utilized, to supplement the work that Japan is doing, because Japan is one which is a country which is already a leader in basically technological advancement, and they're always ahead of the curve. But what India can do is that it can kind of give the scale to the technology and give the scale to the initiatives that the Japan is taking, right? So, for example, Japan's digital transformation agenda is increasingly intertwined with India's burgeoning tech ecosystem. And we are already collaborating with Japan a lot, and not from the GCC perspective, but otherwise also India and Japan has a fairly healthy and very long standing trade relationships. The other place, again, which is not just particular to Japan, but it can also provide you with a 24/7 client support from India. And we do see that there is, again, given the history with Japan, even the language capability, there are many more people with the language capabilities which are available in India now, which can be utilized further for these 24/7 support centers. And then the other area is, obviously, that we see like the demographic in Japan, where we know that it has a aging population, and then India can provide that young workforce for them, where they are facing challenges in the country. So these are some of the areas where we do see how Japan can increase leveraging the GCC ecosystem in India. Over to you, Manabu-san, for the translation.
Thank you, ルチさん。 では、こちらの手短に、要約させていただきます。先ほど、GCC の特徴というところ、強み、魅力的なところを述べましたけども、一方で、日本にとってはですね、まだまだ、プレゼンスとしては低い状況でございます。70% 前後と申してたかと思いますけど、それを UK、US、言葉の問題がやっぱり大きいのかなとは思いますけども、占めていまして、日本が占めているのはだいたい 5% 内外というのが現状でございます。一方でですね、日本企業が得意とする分野、例えばオートモーティブ、エレクトロニクス、あとマニュファクチャリングというところを言ってたかと思いますけども、こちらについては、個別の会社名様は、投影されているので割愛いたしますが、いくつかのですね、日本企業様、鈴木様だったり、もしくは武田様なんかは、特に IT ではないというところではですね、非常にわかりやすい例かなと思います。で、そのらの彼らがですね、テクノロジーアドバンスドというところを日本企業に対して、言ってくれたかと思いますけども、それとですね、インドの、GCC を活用することで、規模のメリットというところ、スケーラビリティをですね、こちらで、活用できる、可能性があるのではないかというところを言ってたかと思います。やはりタレントというところで、なおかつポピュレーションというところはですね、そういう意味ではスケーラビリティをするにあたって非常に大きなベースになるのかなというところでございます。で、もちろんですね、時差というところもありますので、時差の違いを活用した、幅広い時間軸での、サポート。これは対日本企業に限らないと言ってましたけども、とですね、あとは英語だけではなくて、複数の言語対応能力というところも、やはりこれだけの人口がおりますので、そういうところもですね、日本企業様に対して、提供できる、ポイントかなというところでございます。はい、簡単ではありますが以上でございます。Thank you for Ruchi さん。Let me hand over to you or other people, right?
Thank you. Thank you. So next we speak about how does one get the sponsorship or an agreement to open a GCC. So there are various factors, or I would say considerations one need to do when they are deciding whether it makes sense for them to open an offshore center or not. Um, like earlier also, I think cost still remains one of the key factors of sending work to India on a couple of things. One is, of course, the real estate is cheaper in India as compared to, especially, I will not say like in the major cities like a Delhi or a Bangalore or Bombay, but there are a lot of the tier two cities where the real estate still remains much cheaper than some of the other onshore countries. The again, the labor arbitrage maybe not as cost effective as it used to be earlier, but it still remains fairly cost effective as compared to hosting these processes onshore with some of these countries. So the cost efficiency definitely is one area. So when you're preparing your business case, and the business case has to be prepared to be sent to the management, these are some of the key factors that you should have in your business case. One is, of course, the objective, and the objective can change from time to time. Like earlier, I mentioned cost used to be one key objective, and still it remains one of the major objectives. But now we see there are other emerging factors that are coming in, which is basically a talent arbitrage. And talent arbitrage not necessarily from the perspective of that the entire innovation, but then definitely the large number of people that can be made available at a very short span of time to boost or accelerate the development of the technology much faster than otherwise it is possible. So scalability is another area which you can think of when you're thinking about your strategy of like why some function needs to be offshore. The other factor is definitely in terms of the innovation and transformation. A distributed or a very distributed process, it's difficult to kind of transform something which is like very different and is kind of sitting in various jurisdictions or various spaces. But if you centralize something, even integrating or applying automation becomes much easier when you have either something hosted on the cloud or when something is centralized. So basically a combination of these things sort of prepare you for the presenting a business case to the management that why an offshore center makes sense. And as I said, it can be different for different organizations depending on what their maturity levels are internally, as well as what the key objective of by the board or by the management has been given to them, whether it is to reduce costs, whether to have more strategic or business driven decisions, even if it is more to do with say for example transformation. A lot of these things can actually be driven from these offshore centers, and that could be one of the areas that you can consider when considering the decision like that. And obviously it is a fairly uphill task, because you just don't have to just kind of prepare a business case, but also have to convince the senior management, because they have to buy it out before you can actually start your transition. So these are some of the key consideration one needs to keep in mind when preparing a business case, or even when thinking about opening a center in India. Over to you, Manabu-san.
サンキュー、リュウジさん。では、こちらも、はい、簡単に、ちょっと重複する内容も、あったかと思いますので、簡潔にお伝えしたいと思います。GCC をですね、これから解説もしくは、ブーストしていくというところについては、大きくは4つの検討する、事項があるのかなというふうに申していたかと思います。で、まずは、やはりマジョリティというところではですね、コストのエフィシエンシー、効率性というところを言ってたかと思います。これがキーファクターの大きな一つですと。で、皆さんご承知のようにインドは非常に成長してますので、デリーとかムンバイ、あとバンガロールって言ってたかと思うんですが、いわゆるティア1シティだとですね、だいぶ上がってはきているものの、もちろんこれだけの人口がいますので、ティア2シティもですね、まだまだいろいろありまして、そういうところは不動産コストというところではまだまだ競争力があるのかなというところでございます。で、二つ目はちょっと順序逆でしたけども、優秀な人材へのアクセス、タレントって言ってたかと思います。やはり優秀な人材がですね、アウトソーシングにとどまらず、イノベーションを起こすというところでは、非常に貴重なファクターになりますので、こちらへのアクセスというところは非常に大事かなというのが二つ目です。で、三つ目が、ちょっとこれ重複してますけども、スケーラビリティ、拡張性というところは、大きなポイントの一つでございます。で、最後四つ目はですね、やはりイノベーションというところは、やはりリソースが分散していてもなかなか起こりづらい、いくらリモートで、コネクトしてもですね、現実的には難しいところもありますので、それをセントラライズ化、集中させることで、より情報だったり、知識の、共有、交換というところが、進みやすいというのは、実際現実は、コロナを踏まえてもそうかなと思いますので、インドみたいな、GCC がですね、集中的に数多くあるところで、集約していくというところは、大きな4つ目のポイントとしてはあり得るのかなと思います。もちろん、皆様の、ストラテジーに応じてですね、どのような目的を持って GCC を作るのかというのが、まずは一番大事ですので、そのオブジェクティブズに応じてですね、今申し上げたような4つ、もしくはそれ以外もあるとは思いますけども、4つのメリットがその目的を達成するにあたって、大きなファクターになるのかどうかというところを踏まえてご検討いただけるといいのかなと考えるところでございます。はい、Thank you, ホルチさん。Let me hand over to you.
Thank you. So the last thing that I would like to speak about, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, given that we are already at 11:15. So very quickly, I would like to now talk about that how the GCCs are structured or how the offshoring happened. So basically, there could be an integrated structure where, like, you have an onshore center, or then you have a network, because it's not that there's only like one entity that is taking support from the offshore center. You pretty much service different organizations sitting out of India, and you have a integrated model where all the functions which are sitting here are and they are mostly function led, and then those functions are reporting into the global head, and then that kind of the output goes to the onshore teams. But then as they mature, or as the organization matures, some of the business functions also get transferred here, and then you have the functions. So for example, you will have like an analytics function, which is you have a retail, for example, in banking you have a retail banking analytics, or you have a customer analytics, or you have a risk analytics, and then you have a risk head or a business head also sitting in India, and then the output goes out of India. And then you also have some of these hybrid models where you have some businesses sitting in India along with some functions, or you have some only functions sitting in India and reporting into the onshore. So you have like you can have various models in which you can work and kind of structure your GCCs here. It is fairly flexible. And also sometimes we have seen GCCs working very closely with third party service providers as well on some of the functions. So I would like to end my session here. And Manabu-san, please, if you once you translate, and then I would invite Vijay to take over from here.
Thank you so much. すいません。ちょっと時間が押してますので、こちらも簡潔にですね、今までは統合されたインテグレートなストラクチャーからスタートをして、これが主流というところではありましたけども、サービスだったり、もしくはファンクションの複雑化、様々なものになってくるに、応じてですね、やっぱりインテグレートだけではなかなか対応がしきれないというところで、一つのオプションとしては連邦化されたストラクチャーというところを言ってたかと思います。で、それに加えてですね、ハイブリッドストラクチャーということで、必ずしもそのインドだけではなくて、インドのオフショアだけではなくて、インドのマーケットに対してのオンショアというところも踏まえての対応だったり、もしくは、皆様の、母国との連携というところも含めての対応だったりというところで、これはハイブリッドと言ってますけども、フレキシブルな、ストラクチャーなのかなというふうにご理解いただいていいかと思います。要すれば最後述べてましたが、様々なストラクチャーが考えられますので、これは皆様のビジネスもしくはストラテジーに応じてですね、柔軟に検討できればなというところでございます。はい、すいません。ちょっと駆け足ですが、let me hand over to next slide.
Thanks, Ruchi-san and Manabu-san. Good morning, everyone. My name is Vijay. I'm a chartered accountant and tax expert with a focus on the GCC space. Today, I'll talk to you about some of the tax and regulatory considerations in connection with setting up of a GCC in India. Let me start with this slide. So this slide broadly talks about the key considerations that need to be kept in mind while setting up the entity in India. So typically, when we do this setting up of a GCC, the first step is to see whether you require any foreign investment approvals from the government. Typically, for GCCs, there is no requirement for that approval, but in certain unique circumstances, those approvals may be required, perhaps due to nature of activity, perhaps due to political considerations, etc. So, but in a classic sense, GCCs don't require such approvals. Moving on, the second step is typically to focus on the location. And Ruchi-san did speak about some of the considerations that go into deciding the cost, the infrastructure, the talent, accessibility, etc. What's different and what has happened in India after that is that historically we never had any sort of policies incentivizing GCCs in India. But last year, some of the states have started coming up with policies that incentivize setup of GCCs within those states. So Tamil Nadu has come out with a GCC policy. There is also Karnataka, which came out with a policy which got implemented as recently as September. Maharashtra has announced a GCC policy. Typically, these policies don't confer pure tax incentives, but they do confer incentives from a fiscal perspective. So whether some of the incentives are in connection with talent, upskilling, internships. Also, there are R&D related incentives when you have investment in new technologies, setting up of innovation hubs, uh, huge amount of capex being invested, and also miscellaneous benefits around electricity duty, rental benefits, and so on. So depending on the strategy and the focus areas of a GCC, it's important to identify what sort of incentives could be applicable. And then, of course, while that may not be an underlying factor in deciding the location, it would make perhaps sense to avail the benefits in a particular location by making an application to the government and then following up and getting the benefits from them. Relatively new development, but it started in Tamil Nadu and now it's happening in other states as well. We expect many of the other states also to come out with such policies. Uh, Also, we are seeing that uh, the gift city, which historically has not had seen too much action from a GCC perspective, but has seen action in recent times. And this is due to various relaxations in perhaps the conditions which were more restrictive earlier. Now there have been relaxations, and now there have been GCCs that have been set up as well. So these are the new trending things which have happened in the last couple of years. Also wanted to highlight that there is a national policy which is being thought of by the central government. Nirmala Sitharaman had mentioned about it in her budget speech, and she said that this policy would focus more on setting up of GCCs in tier 2 cities. I'll talk a little more about this in the next slide. So we spoke about location. Then we focus on the kind of entity. Typically, in India, there are two types of entities that are prevalent. There is the corporate or PLC structure, and there is also the LLP structure. Uh, most GCs in India are structured as a company because this is the prevailing structure that's been there for several years. LLPs, while they offer certain benefits because of the very nature of being an LLP, it is taxed at a higher tax rate. However, having not there's no repatriation tax. In other words, when you repatriate your reserves back to your parent companies, there's no tax on that. So overall, it would make sense to evaluate both these structures and see what works out for you from an ETR perspective and also flexibility perspective. Uh, then the next point, which is relevant, is around investment and the investment structure. The trend for GCCs is to have a simple vanilla structure these days. That is, for example, if it is from Japan, directly hold that in India, the Japanese entity holds the Indian entity. However, there are times when what we call an intermediate holding company structure could be relevant. That is, let's say, Japan investing through an entity in, let's say, Singapore and then coming into India. Depending on the need to extract cash from India and how to have profit cash circulation strategies within the group structure, these structures may need to be evaluated. Last but not the least is on the funding side. So we have various funding options when it comes to setting up an entity in India. The common one being equity. There have been debt structures also which have been there in place, but not prevailing in recent times. However, having said that, there are certain hybrid structures also which come into place where you have a combination of equity and debt. Also, there are models where you have advances for services coming in to the entity, which also help in faster movement of the business. Uh, that's on the funding side. Last, but I think I did cover all the main points. But just one last hygiene point is around the transfer pricing structure. It's important to have a solid, robust transfer pricing structure in India. The bulk of income tax litigation in India is on the transfer pricing side, and many GCCs do face transfer pricing litigation in India. So it's important to assess depending on what type of GCC you are, whether it is low end, back end kind of work, or whether there's an innovation focus. Depending on that, the kind of margins the entity would need to make in India could be very different. So it's important to do the study around that and see that you have a robust structure which could be questioned by the tax authorities at a later point. So that brings us to an end to the setup of this slide, the setup slide. With that, I'll pass on to Manabu-san for the translation.
Thank you for your explanation. では、こちらもすいません。駆け足で、ご説明いたします。主に5つのポイントで説明してたかと思いますが、まず前段階としてですね、GCC そのものは特にオーソリティのアプルーバルがいるものではありませんので、あくまでも、セクターとかの、観点では、そういうオーソリティのアプルーバルが必要なものはあり得ますけども、GCC そのものというのは、まずそこは、パーミッションとかが必要なものではないというところからスタートしています。で、まず5つの中でですね、まず1つ目としては所在地というところを言ってたかと思います。で、所在地の中ではですね、具体的な州としてはカルナタカ、マハラシュトラ、あとはタミルなどを挙げてたかと思いますけども、特に日本企業が出てくるというところから考えてもですね、この3つなり、もしくは4つなりの州というところがポイントになるかなと。で、このような州はですね、やはりインセンティブも積極的に出していますし、州の対応も、比較的なところかもしれませんけども、フレンドリーなところもありますので、こういうところがまずは選定の軸になるかとは思います。もちろん、申してもおりましたように、ストラテジーだったり、フォーカスするエリアによってですね、そこは変わってきますので、そこはご留意いただければと思います。で、2つ目は、どのような法人形態を取るかということで、PLC と LLP、申しておりました。PLC はいわゆる株式会社で、LLP は、これも日本にあるかと思いますけども、有限責任組合というところですね。一般的にはPLC の方が多いのかなとは思いますけども、とはいえケースによっては LLP の方が適切な場合もあるかと思いますので、この2つを軸に検討することになると思います。で、3点目はインベストメントディシジョンというところで、基本的にはシンプルに、実施するということになるとは思いますけども、日本もしくはいくつかの会社様の場合はシンガポールから、出資されるということもありますので、シンガポールも絡んでくる場合は、グループとしてのキャッシュマネジメントというところは大事になるポイントかなというのは述べてたかと思います。で、4つ目としてはファンディングのところですね。ここは一応ハイブリッドも含めて申してましたが、こちらもシンプルな形が基本的には多いのかなとは思うところでございます。で、最後5つ目ですね。いくつか資料の方には書いておりますけども、ポイントとしてはやはりトランスファープライシング、移転価格のところが非常にポイントになります。インドの場合は、国外との取引が1円以上あればですね、移転価格の適用対象になりますので、で、インドはやはりアグレッシブなタックスの国でありますのでですね、ここのトランスファープライシングというところは非常に大事だというところは念頭に置いていただけると今日は非常にポイントかなというところでございます。Thank you so much. Please let me hand over to you.
Thanks, Manabu-san. This slide talks about the policy landscape for GCCs. We did speak about the state level policies while I was on the earlier slide. Maybe I'll just talk a little bit more about the national side. I mentioned that there's a national framework being contemplated for promoting GCCs in emerging tier 2 cities. What's happened is that the government has also set up a council to look into this. The council, we understand, has met a couple of times, but they are yet to release a draft framework. We expect this draft framework to come out in the next couple of months. Apart from this national framework, what's also happened recently is that the central government has implemented a scheme known as the Employee Linked Incentive Scheme. While the scheme is not exclusively for GCCs, it panders to GCCs in a sense that all new hiring, respect to a sector, it does have the benefit which can be availed. And we are aware that there are many GCCs which are attempting to avail this benefit and making out that case before the government. So I think I'll keep this short because largely content was covered in the last slide. And I'll pass it on to Manabu-san for the translation. Request Ruchi-san to take over from Manabu-san to cover the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you. 先ほど最後に申しましたように、ポイントは、ラストスライドでも、カバーされますので、2つのポイントだけですね。GCC の政策状況は、先ほど申し上げましたように、公的な、州及び連邦からのですね、支援も、受けられるというところでございます。で、州レベルではですね、いくつかの州がカウンセルを設定して、こちらを支援する体制をとっておりますし、連邦政府レベルでもですね、全国で適用されるようなインセンティブのスキームがあるというところでございます。このようなところも、まずはビジネスが大事だとは思いますけども、プラスアルファ、ビジネスでの決定に加えてですね、インセンティブの支援というところも含めて最終的なご決定に活用していただければというところでございます。Thank you so much. Let me hand over to you.
Thank you, Vijay-san. Thank you, Manabu-san. Just very briefly, GT has been working in this space for a long time, and we have been supporting these centers right from the inception to their expansion to once they mature to see how they can bring more value to their organizations. So, like in the setup stage, we help them all from the legal and compliance perspective, from their what should be their structure, what should be their tax structure, how they need to kind of come in, location strategy, deciding their transition plan, and supporting them their entire entire hiring space as well. And as they set up, then most of them are like in the expansion mode to again helping them in the transitioning more processes from onshore to offshore, also helping them in their ongoing tax and Indian compliances when they set up their entity here, as well as supporting them in their various functions as and when required. Similarly, once they mature, again, more demands are put into the GCCs to say that how can you bring more value besides the normal work that they're doing, considering once they have reached a centralized stage where how to kind of bring more transformations, how to bring more technology, how to bring more innovation. So we help them from like right from setup till the maturity. So over to you, Manabusan, for the translation, and then I would like to hand over to Suguna-san for to take over from here.
サンキュー、ルチさん。では、最後こちらですね。我々の方での、ご支援というところで、大きく3つのフェーズでご説明をいたしました。1つはセットアップのところですね。申しておりましたように、タックスもしくはレギュラトリーというところは、やはりインドいろいろとありますので、こういうところはですね、ご自身でっていうのはなかなか現実的に難しいところもありますので、すべてかどうかは別としてですね、ぜひ専門家のご活用をご検討いただけたらいいのかなというふうに思うところです。で、次に拡大、エクスパンションというところについては、こちらについてもオンゴーイングでですね、タックスレギュラトリーの、ケアというところはやっぱり必要になりますので、こういうところのサポート、および、プロセスだったり、組織の、トランジションというところについてはですね、我々の方でもご支援というところはできるのかなと思います。で、最後、成熟化、マチュアにしていく、より、成長、もしくは、組織を、成熟させていくというところではですね、我々に限らずインドというところはやはり IT が強みの国でございますので、それを引き継いで我々の方でもですね、デジタルトランスフォーメーションだったり、IT を活用したイノベーションというところはですね、お力になれるところはあるのかなというところでございます。これをすることでですね、バリューエイディット、より価値のある GCC にしていくというところが、ポイントにはなるのかなというところが、最後のメッセージでございます。Thank you so much. Let me hand over to Suguna-san. Please your message to all.
Thank you, Rishi Sharma-san, Vijay Jairam-san, and Manabu Yokota-san for the insightful talk that we have had today. Ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to clarify a couple of doubts. Our team will be happy to answer a few questions. 皆様どうぞご自由にご質問をお寄せください。これからチームの方々が皆様からのいくつかのご質問にお答えさせていただきます。Questions from audience?
You can raise your hand or post your question on this Q&A, which is there.
I find there's one in chat box. Ruchi-san, if you can handle just one or two.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question from the audience.
Hi all.
Yeah.
Hi all. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, chat is disabled for us, Sugnasa.
No, Q&A should be enabled for you, so it doesn't matter, but go ahead.
Okay. I heard you saying that GCCs are moving from an offshore sender who does the basic kind of work to a change senders. My question is, how can Japanese firm transform their GCCs from a cost-saving unit into a innovation hubs for AI, automation, etc.?
Thanks, Vaishak, for the question. So, as I mentioned earlier, that the lot of the centers actually start from the basic level work, but as and when they centralize or mature, they can start transformation work. And how it starts is that obviously the tech becomes a big enabler. So uh, once they assess that which are the areas they want to develop and which are the strategically important areas for them, they need to kind of come and see that what part of it is what's the structure or operating model of that particular function right now, and what are the areas that they are trying to address from that. And given the, say, the cloud or the new technology that has come, they should be able to then provide that or strategize in terms of their innovation journey. So giving you an example, for example, the MUFG bank, it has, which started, which is not a very old GCC here in India. They are developing a blockchain based cross border solution for their financial products, which is enabling the Japanese firm to digitize and their traditional services, right? Similarly, and that is something where the GCC has kind of given a lot of input. Similarly, another example is the HSBC, again, HSBC Bank, which sort of wanted to have the NFT, which is again the Web 3.0 technology, the NFT based trading model, and they actually kind of launched their first bond, NFT based bond, into the market. And all of that work of NFT based bond in the market was actually done from India. So they were able to kind of, one, utilize a lot of this talent. And since a large product team now sits out of India for some of these banks, they're able to kind of create these new and innovative ideas over there. Similarly, some of the IP for the manufacturing sector is also being driven from India. So, as and when you have the business and the function sitting together, it is much easier to kind of then, collaborate and come up with these new and innovative ideas. So, we already have the examples where some of the work is being done along with the GCC. I hope I addressed your question.
Yes, thank you.
Then we allow one more question.
How we see automation and reshaping future of role GCC in India over the next 5 years. Yes. So basically, again, like I gave some of the examples of where the GCCs played a very significant role in bringing up some of the innovation and the products into the market. Similarly, when the AI and automation, or especially say agentic, so the question is actually the that how do you see AI and automation reshaping the future of role of GCC in India over the next 5 years, right? So some of it I already answered, where how technology based innovation can bring in these innovations to the industry. The other area is that where there's a lot of conversation about how this entire agentic coming into, or the large language models coming into play, how it's going to impact the GCC as a sector, because it still remains a very labor intensive. Honestly, I think there is a huge focus now by the GCCs also in the upskilling. And by upskilling, what we do see is that, so instead of like erstwhile areas where you were trying to see how you can put more heads and to the same work that you were doing, I think in the next, with AI and automation, they are going to see what more value you are delivering from these centers, rather than saying that how many more heads you can add to these centers, and what are some of the processes can be either automated, or at least start to bring in a lot more work with the same kind of headcount. So some of these things we do see kind of coming in. So I hope I'm able to answer that question.
Uh,
The other, yeah, the other question is that, have you seen cultural barriers that are hurdles for Japanese EU entities in building GCC in India? Day one, most employees from parent organized GCC employees, similar to consultants from TCS Infosys. How has the transformation been on those lines? There definitely, Ganesh, there are some cultural barriers, and again, depending on there are certain countries which are more conservative than the others. So, for example, we do see European countries, and even Japan, for that matter, they are more conservative and they want little more control. On some of the areas. However, having said that, we have seen some of the examples already here. We have a Society Generale, which is here. We have a Deutsche Bank, which is here, and France being again very, very conservative. So how this start is that obviously there are certain areas where they need more control. So for example, regulatory, especially local regulations, if I have to look at say a more what do you call that, regulated sector. So in the, say for example, the regulated sector, we see a lot more conservative approach as opposed to some of the other areas. So it's a combination of like what you are trying to send and what you are trying to keep. And also what happens is that when there's a precedence that has been set by an organization, it becomes a much easier conversation for the others. And now there are enough examples that has been set from both these regions, whether EU and Japan, where they have very categorically demonstrated that you can do as much work, especially in the in-house. Now a comparison to a third party service provider, again, because there is a question of control. You have a way more control on an in-house or a capability center as opposed to a third party service provider, right? So the quality of resources, the control that you have, the ability to be able to take more control decisions for some of the global capability centers as opposed to the third party centers, there's a huge difference. So and but I would also like to highlight, it's a very cyclical thing. So what happens is that for a third party, the even if when you have a capability center in India, some of the people are interested in still keeping something in the third party where they feel that there is no, say, career pathing for in some of the functions. So for example, IT maintenance and something which typically some of the organizations don't want to host inside their own capability centers, and they're happy to kind of use a third party service provider for that. So those kind of models are also we see in the market. I hope I have answered that question.
Yeah. Thank you, Ruchi. I think we are exceeding our time limit. So probably, if it's okay, we can try to wind up. What do you say, Ruchi-san?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, we are not able to accept any more questions due to paucity of time. Do feel free to email your queries and we will have it answered and sent to you. ただし申し訳ございませんが、時間の関係の上、これ以上のご質問を受け付けることができません。もし追加でご質問がございましたら、どうぞメールでお送りください。後ほど必ずご回答をお届けいたします。じゃあどうもありがとうございます。Ladies and gentlemen, I hope today's webinar would have been useful to you. IJCCI and Grant Thornton look forward to your feedback. Please feel free to get in touch with us for any assistance. Thank you very much for your time and we look forward to your continued participation in all our events. 本日のウェビナーが皆様にとって有益な時間となりましたことを心より願っております。IJCCI および GT では皆様からのご意見やご感想をお待ちしておりますので、ぜひお寄せください。また、ご不明点やご相談がございましたら、どうぞお気軽にご連絡いただければと思います。お忙しい中、最後までご参加いただき誠にありがとうございました。今後とも私たちが開催するイベントにご参加いただければことを心よりお待ち申し上げます。改めて感謝申し上げます。Thank you very much all of you for the lovely time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.